Good morning and welcome to the Virginia Farmers Market Association's first ever Food Safety Summit. My name is Kim Hutchinson and I'm the Executive Director of VAFMA, the Virginia Farmers Market Association. The goal of this summit is to give Virginia farmers market managers and their vendors all that you need to know about food safety laws and policies for operating markets in Virginia in one place. We're extremely grateful to the Virginia Department of Health, the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, the Virginia Cooperative Extension, and the Virginia Family Nutrition Program for their partnership on this event. I'd also like to thank our supporting partners, the USDA, FMPP, Farm Credit, Virginia State University College of Agriculture, Prince Charitable Trust, Virginia Fresh Match, and the Virginians for Farmers Market Lovers. Today will be a long event, and to give everyone the information that they need, we have worked in a few breaks, but we are recording each presenter and we will post the recordings plus the links to further resources on the VAFMA website. These videos and slides will be posted by next week and we will email them out to you once they are posted. So for everybody that is registered, you're going to get an email at some point next week by Wednesday, we hope, that has all of the links to all of the recordings and the resource links that are provided here today. In addition, we have been overwhelmed with questions and we're doing our best to get them all answered today. However, any questions that are not captured today, we are going to get all of this information pulled together and put into one resource document for you, and we will send that out to you from each of the presenters. So don't worry if your question isn't specifically answered today. It will be answered and we will send that information out to you. There are going to be times for questions in each of the presentations. So if you will please drop all of your questions into the Q&A. This is a little different for us. We have 600 people that have registered for this, so I'm not sure we're going to be able to get all 600 questions answered today. So drop them in the Q&A and we will make sure that we capture all of those. We've collected as well the questions that you sent to us ahead of time and and those will be addressed today. This is going to take a little bit of time, but just bear with us. We're doing the best to get you all the information that we possibly can. We encourage you to sign up for our newsletter to receive information on when today's recordings are posted. There's a link in the chat box for our newsletter sign up. In addition, if you'd like proof of attendance for today's summit, we will be putting a link in the chat box where you can add your email address and a certificate of proof of participation will be emailed to you next week. So again, just to reiterate, if you need proof of attendance for today's Food Safety Summit, click on the link that's in the chat box at the end of the presentation, and you can add your email address and we will provide you with a certificate of proof of participation next week. Alternatively, if you are a market manager and you want your vendors to watch certain topics, VAFMA will be posting the recordings of each session by topic. We are a membership organization whose mission is to support farmers markets through education initiatives while building opportunities for collaboration, networking, advocacy, and innovation that supports the growth and sustainability of farmers markets statewide. If you find our training events valuable, we encourage you to consider becoming a member or donating to VAFMA today. There's a link in the chat box with more information. We have a new peer-to-peer network via Google Groups. If you would like to network with other farmers market managers and vendors online, the link to the Google group will be put in the chat box. Finally, today's presentation will cover a wide range of topics. We have linked the agenda in the chat box. I'm sure you're following here that all of the links are in the chat box and all the questions go in the Q&A. So I would like to say a special thanks to all of our partners. Again, the Virginia Department of Health, Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, Virginia Cooperative Extension, and the Virginia Family Nutrition Program, as well as the USDA, FMPP, Farm Credit, VSU College of Agriculture, Prince Charitable Trust, Virginia Fresh Match, and the Virginians for Farmers Market Lovers Trail and Virginia's for Farmers Market Lovers. We thank you. We have great presenters today. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Our first presenter is Peri Pearson, who is with Virginia Department of Health, and she is the state food consultant for VDH. Peri, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, so as Kim said, I am with the Virginia Department of Health. I've served as a state food consultant for the past 8 years, and I worked 17 years prior to that in a local health district, specifically in Henrico County here in Central Virginia. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning, and I'm going to start off with a discussion about the VDH role at farmers market. And my objectives today are specifically to give you an overview of the VDH and VDAC's Memorandum of Understanding, to talk about VDH requirements at the market. And that will include a discussion of a permit to operate a VDH permitted facility and then operational requirements for those permitted establishments. So starting with an overview of the Virginia Department of Health Memorandum of Understanding, MOU. So the purpose of this MOU, which was signed and updated last January, but we didn't really implement it during the season last year because we hadn't been able to do our staff training until later on in the year. So this is sort of new this year. It's not real different from what we had done before. But the purpose of the MOU is just to clarify VDH permit and inspection procedures for vendors operating at a farmer's market. We also want to promote the highest level of public health and safety protection, ensure efficient use of state resources. And I would like to just point out that this MOU is on the VDH food safety page under the tab for VDH MOU agreements. And I can share some of those in resources that VMFA will provide following this session. This MOU, however, it does not abrogate VDH's authority to inspect and or permit any food service facility otherwise subject to regulation. So the inspection authority of VDH and VDACs may overlap with respect to food products offered at farmers markets. In general, VDH is responsible for inspecting all establishments which manufacture, sell, expose, or offer food and drink products for sale. VDH is responsible for inspecting any place where food is served to the public, whether on or off the premises, and any place where food is prepared. So both VDH and VDACs use the FDA Model Food Code as the basis for their retail inspections. The requirements are essentially the same, regardless of which agency is regulating the vendor. So under this MOU, farmers market vendors who are not regulated by VDH include vendors selling food items from approved sources, such as manufacturers inspected by VDACs. We also do not regulate vendors selling packaged food items that are exempt from VDAC's inspection, as specified in Code of Virginia 3.2-5130A, 3 through 5. Those vendors can sell these products at farmers markets and do not require a VDH permit to serve or sample these foods. And this is going to be discussed when VDAC's food safety folks do their presentation in just a minute. So that there'll be a lot more details on that, that exemption and the products that are under home inspection by VDACs. The vendors that are regulated by VDH at a farmer's market include vendors that have a valid food establishment permit from VDH, and they may serve food at the farmer's market without obtaining an additional VDH permit. There are also vendors preparing food at the farmer's market by cooking, steaming, and this would include vendors who provide beverage service, as well as vendors who do not fall into the categories on the previous slide. So those are all under VDH authority, and they must have a VDH permit to operate. We have a specific exemption in Code of Virginia 35.1-14 for vendors who are offering their own farm-produced products directly to consumers for their personal use. So at the farmer's market, these farmers may offer samples of their fruits and vegetables so that they can cut a slice off to offer a sample. They could cook fruits and vegetables, or they could prepare cooked poultry egg, serving their own farm-produced products directly to consumers. They are exempt from VDH inspection. However, note the sentence at the bottom of this slide that adding their farm-produced products to other ingredients, putting them on a pizza, making a sandwich, etc., is not allowed under this exemption. So the types of vendors then that are regulated by VDH are permitted food establishments, mobile food units, and temporary food establishments. So when we're talking about these permitted food establishments, so this is like somebody that's operating a restaurant already in the somewhere in this Commonwealth. So they already have a VDH permit, they're already under inspection. So when an operator applies to VDH for a permit, they declare the types of food processes that they will use to prepare foods. And we'll get to why this is important later on in my presentation. But what this means is that a facility that is permitted to, say, prepare beverages, maybe they're a smoothie shop or a donut shop or something like that. But if they're permitted to prepare beverages or other ready-to-eat foods, they can't then take that permit and operate a temporary food establishment where they prepare foods by cooking or cooling using a more involved process, if you will. But they could offer similar products to what they offer in their permitted establishment. And they will need to use, so they would need to use the ready-to-eat foods in their TFE. Inspections of all types of food establishments are based on the risk categorization assigned to the establishment. So this vendor would be inspected by VDH at the market, and a copy of the food establishment permit would be posted at the TFE. So whenever you're under VDH inspection, your permit should be visibly posted to be visible to the public. Another type of facility that's regulated by VDH is mobile unit. So a mobile food unit is a food establishment mounted on wheels that is readily movable from place to place at all times during inspection. This includes push carts, trailers, trucks, or vans. The unit, all operations, and all equipment must be integral to and within or attached to the unit. The mobile food unit permit is issued by the local health district that permits the commissary for the mobile unit. That's the facility that the mobile unit is conducting preparation. Maybe they're storing their food there. They might be taking their wares back to the commissary to wash, rinse, and sanitize them. But the location of the commissary is the location of the permit for the most part. If a commissary isn't needed because all operations are conducted on board the unit, the permit is issued by the local health district in which the operator resides. A mobile food unit from another state needs a Virginia permit. And this permit that's issued to the mobile food establishment is an annual permit and it's valid statewide. Inspections of mobile food units are conducted based on risk category, and the risk category is determined by the food safety risks associated with the types of food processes the operator used to prepare the food. Compliance history is also considered. The mobile food unit permit is a sticker that is affixed to the unit near the customer service area. The expiration month is blacked out, and the operator owner name, address, local health district who issued the permit, and the risk rating is provided on the sticker. Some local health districts have local ordinances that require local permits for mobile units. So although the sticker is a statewide permit, just keep in mind that sometimes a local health district will also require a local permit. Okay, the other type of food establishment then that you might find at a operating as a vendor would be a temporary food establishment. And a temporary food establishment is a food establishment that operates for a period of no more than 14 consecutive days in conjunction with a single event or celebration. The temporary nature of these types of facilities typically means that they are not connected to public utilities, and they, this general standard operating procedures are a little bit more difficult to maintain. They typically are hauling their water that they're using for hand washing, cleaning, and sanitizing, and they have to take, extra steps to protect their food from contamination. So these are the types of things you see at festivals and fairs generally. And a temporary food establishment is a permit that's issued just for that event. And it's also all food preparation has to occur at that permitted facility, at the TFE. So just keep that in mind. An application for a TFE permit must be submitted at least 10 days prior to the event. A permit may be issued for multiple occurrences of an event for up to 1 year. So this would be the situation with the farmer's market vendor, right? The permit must be posted where it's visible to the public, and the food establishment with a valid VDH permit can operate as a TFE without an additional permit. But again, they need to post that, a copy of the permit that they have. So I've talked about risk categorization, and I just wanted to give you a visual to associate with that. So when we talk about risk categorization of a food establishment, we're talking about the type of food preparation processes that they use in conjunction with their compliance history. We know the risk of foodborne illness increases when food preparation processes include more trips through the temperature danger zone. So that time between refrigeration and cooking. So foods that require no cooking or are ready to eat present a minimal hazard, where foods that are cooked, cooled, and reheated present a higher risk because there are more opportunities for foodborne pathogens to grow. And when we talk about pathogens, we're just talking about those microorganisms that can cause foodborne illness. So it's important to note that some of these organisms, such as viruses and parasites, and even some bacteria, don't really need an opportunity for growth to cause illness. So this is just an example then of how we categorize risk for temporary food establishments. So for a risk category 1 facility, they would be serving non-TCS or commercially packaged TCS foods that are offered in the manufacturer's original package. So, whoops, I should have fixed this. This would include kettle corn, things like pork rinds, things of that nature. Risk category 2, preparation of ready-to-eat food. Again, there's no cook step. It would just be reheating a commercially processed food for same-day service. So examples here would include things like just, like opening the can of tuna and preparing tuna salad and serving that product, taking barbecue from a commercial container and heating that and serving that on a sandwich. A risk category 3 facility then has more complex food operations, including cook, cool, reheat, hot hold, or preparation of bulk quantities of food. And I just want to show you that this is also found, this chart, which I know you can't read, and I don't expect you to be able to read this, but this is in the temporary food policy that is posted on the VDH food safety web pages. And so this also gives you that same information. So why is food safety important at the farmers market? According to the CDC, there are an estimated 48 million foodborne illnesses in the United States each year. 128,000 people are hospitalized due to foodborne illness, and around 3,000 people die. Many different disease-causing germs can contaminate food and cause many different foodborne diseases. The harmful toxins and chemicals can also contaminate foods and cause foodborne intoxication or toxin-mediated infections. These CDC estimates are based on an analysis of data from several surveillance systems that collect information from state and local health department laboratories. Operational requirements for all food establishments permitted by VDH are based on the CDC risk factors for foodborne illness. So some of that data that we just talked about, has been compiled into a report and analyzed, and that's where these CDC risk factors for foodborne illness come from. And I truly believe that no one goes to work thinking that the food they serve that day may make someone sick, but we know that too many preventable foodborne illnesses still occur. When food establishments have adequate controls in place over the 5 leading risk factors for foodborne illness, the risk of causing a foodborne illness is greatly reduced. Reviewing proposed operations with the establishment operator is part of the application and plan review process that the local health district conducts with the operator prior to the event. This quick overview is going to serve as a reminder of the risks that food vendors need to be concerned about. So we're going to talk about each one of these operational areas then, the source of your food, employee practices and personal hygiene, cooking of raw animal foods, holding temperatures, and preventing contamination and cross-contamination in the facility. I do want you to understand that the Virginia food regulations do require that every food establishment have a person in charge during all hours of operation. So this ensures that the continuous presence of someone who is responsible for monitoring and managing all food establishment operations and who is authorized to take actions to ensure that safe food is served. A certified food protection manager, a CFPM, is required unless the food establishment only serves non-TCS food or only stores and prepares food by reheating or cold holding commercially processed, fully cooked TCS foods. So I did include a list of the CFPM credential providers. So we recognize the providers on these two slides, and this information is on our website, and I will provide this as a link as well for a resource to the association. So there's 3 listed on this slide, and then an additional 3 on the following slide. And I do want to point out that although Prometric is no longer issuing certificates, an individual possessing a valid certificate from Prometric is still considered a certified food protection manager. So this information again is on our website, and I will provide it separately as a resource to be shared as well. So I've talked about TCS foods already. I think I need to maybe step back and explain what I mean by that term. So a TCS food is a food that must be held under time and or temperature control to limit the growth of pathogens. And these are those organisms that cause foodborne illness or toxin formation by those pathogens in the food. It's based on the food characteristics, such as pH, water activity, the pH and water activity interaction in that food, heat treatment, and packaging of the food. So to give you some examples, animal food that is raw or heat treated is going to be a TCS food. Okay, I'm just gonna go through this list and then we'll talk about some exceptions at the end. So another TCS food are those plant foods that are heat treated. So on this slide, if you can tell what my pictures are, I've got some baked beans, a bowl of rice that's cooked, a baked potato, cooked vegetables. Those would all be considered TCS foods. Raw seed sprouts. So whether they're peas or lentils that you see in one of these photos, or alfalfa sprouts, raw seed sprouts are considered TCS food. Cut melons, cut tomatoes, and that includes mixtures that contain cut raw tomatoes. So things like pico or a salad that has cut tomato or something like that. Excuse me. Also cut leafy greens, excluding herbs, but so cut lettuces, spinach, kale, cabbage, or coleslaw on my slide. So these are all considered TCS foods, and also garlic and oil mixtures are considered TCS. And we just know when you drop that garlic into the oil establishes an anaerobic environment that can allow for the growth and toxin formation of Clostridium botulinum, which is not a good thing to have in your food. So I said we would also cover what is not TCS. So things that are placed in a hermetically sealed can, commercially canned foods, then are not TCS. So those same cooked vegetables, cooked beans, cooked tuna, those things that are in hermetically sealed cans are not TCS. You instinctively know this because these are on the store, the shelves of the grocery store. Just to round out this discussion, I want to point out that an air-cooled hard-boiled egg or an egg that has been pasteurized is also not TCS. And then we have this category where a food that has undergone a product assessment that demonstrates that the growth or toxin formation of microorganisms that are most likely to occur in that food is precluded. So these would be things that you would have a validation study conducted on. We have the Food Producer Technical Assistance Network at Virginia Tech, Food Biz at vt.edu. does this work, as do a lot of other certified or laboratories that specialize in food testing. And there is a list on the Association of Food and Drug Officials website for these types of laboratories that can conduct validation studies. But just some examples of things that might undergo this kind of testing would be your salsas. We have had facilities that have had their salsa recipe submitted for study, and they have shown that the acidification of that product results in a non-TCS food. So there are, things where this is a very useful tool. If you don't want to have to keep something under refrigeration, this is always an option. So sliding back into our discussion then of the things, the 5 leading risk factors for foodborne illness, then we do want to consider the source of our food. So sources that comply with law is the base point here. And that is, the things like USDA or FDA might be regulating the source of that food. Foods prepared in a retail establishment can only be sold to that end-use consumer. So food establishments must obtain food from establishments that are regulated as manufacturers. There is not a requirement for most fruit and vegetables unless the producer has sales that require them to meet the requirements under the produce safety rule. And you're going to hear all about that from somebody else that is not the thing that I know stuff about. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But anyway, the source of the food, then wherever you're getting your food products that you're selling in a VDH inspected facility, have to come from a source that is under regulation if it is required. Next, we're going to talk about personal hygiene and employee practices. So we're going to break this down into the 3 legs of this stool. We're going to talk about employee health, hand washing, and no bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods. So there is a requirement for the person in charge to educate employees on their responsibility to report information about their health and activities as they relate to diseases that are transmissible through food. So, and then the employee has a responsibility to report these specific things. So the employee would have to report symptoms of vomiting, diarrhea, jaundice, sore throat with a fever, or a lesion with pus. They also have to report diagnosed illnesses that we're going to talk about in a minute. They would have to report a past illness with one of these illnesses, or a history of exposure to one of the 6 illnesses. So the illnesses that we're concerned about in particular are listed on this slide. So they include typhoid fever caused by Salmonella typhi, other non-typhoidal salmonellas, Shigella, Shiga toxin producing Escherichia coli, commonly abbreviated as STEC, hepatitis A virus, and norovirus. And we're concerned about these 6 illnesses just because they're easily transmitted in food by an employee who either has symptoms, that would be the riskiest employee, of course, somebody that had symptoms associated with one of these illnesses, which is why if you have vomiting or diarrhea or jaundice, you can't work until there's different return to work criteria for those things. But we know that these illnesses can easily be transmitted in food, and they can make people very sick and result in foodborne illnesses. We do have the guide that includes a really handy discussion of the manager's responsibilities and the employee's responsibilities. This will be another resource that VMFA can share with you all. But this guide to employee health is on our website as well. So good hygienic practices. Just we want to make sure that people operating as a vendor at a farmer's market are avoiding these hand-to-mouth contacts where they can easily contaminate their hands and then transfer that pathogen onto the food. So no eating, drinking, or smoking while you're working. And also consider other things where you end up, with your hand up by your face or mouth. I mean, we see a lot of things like talking on a phone or stuff like that as well. So you just want to avoid potential contamination of your hands. And honestly, people just don't really realize that they're doing things. So this is something where a little positive coaching goes a long ways. Hand washing. Well, this is probably one of the most important public health interventions to prevent the transmission of disease. And so we do expect to see hand washing in all of the permitted facilities. Hands should be washed, after you touch your hair or your face, after using the restroom, after handling dirty wares, handling raw meat, eating, smoking, handling animals, coughing, sneezing, or otherwise potentially contaminating your hands, and before putting on gloves to assume food preparation duties. So this would be the ideal hand sink. We have soap, running water under pressure, have a hand wash sign, paper towels. You can kind of see the dispenser up on the left there. It's not typically what we're going to see a vendor set up at a farmer's market, though. So these hand washing facilities are typical of the temporary food establishment. So they're obviously more temporary in nature. They may provide water by way of a water container. The water container should be enclosed and it should be flushed and sanitized between uses. And, in some cases, a gravity flow type situation may suffice. And in other cases, we might want you to provide hot water for hand washing. The same hand washing supplies are required regardless of the type of food establishment. So you would need to provide hand soap, paper towels, hand washing signage, and then, especially if you're handling raw animal products in your establishment, we would want you to have heated water for hand washing. So the other leg of our three-legged stool there is the no bare hand contact with ready-to-eat food. So using gloves is one way to accomplish this, but you can also accomplish this by using utensils, deli paper, just something that would serve as a barrier between the employee's hands and the food that is ready to eat. Now, we get a lot of complaints from customers that think that people putting cheese on a pizza before it's cooked need to wear gloves, but that is going to be cooked. And so we would not require them to have gloves on for a food that's going to then go through a cooking process. So just remember, lots of options here. I've only got the gloves on the slide, but they can also use utensils or deli paper or something else that would provide a barrier. Oh, I don't like how this happened. Let's see. I don't know if I can get my slide. Oh, okay, I'm sorry about that. So adequate cooking of raw animal foods We just want to make sure that you know how to check and have the thermometer to check your food that if you are cooking raw animal foods, and that you would use a cleaned and sanitized thermometer to verify cooking temperatures are met. So cooking is a control measure that kills pathogens that we know might be present on raw animal foods. So we just want you to have the tools you need in order to verify that you're reaching those goals. And honestly, once people get used to using a food thermometer, they find that they don't overcook their food quite as much as they used to. Um, so for these temperatures, then this is not all inclusive by any means. You know, when we do this training for our staff, we do the training over 5 days, and we require them to do a lot of work before they come to class. So this is definitely the bird's eye view of the requirements. So please keep that in mind. But just to give you the general idea here, the cooking requirements are 145 degrees for 15 seconds for those intact meats, fish, and then eggs that are served for immediate service. So that would control the pathogens of concern on those foods. So we have to increase that temperature by 10 degrees to 155 degrees for 17 seconds for non-intact meats, comminuted fish, or game that is commercially raised, and then eggs that are not served for immediate service. So by non-intact meats, we're basically talking about, like your ground meats, maybe things that have been mechanically tenderized or injected are the non-intact meats. And then again, we're going to increase another 10 degrees when we start talking about cooking poultry. So poultry, we know, just has a higher bacterial load at the beginning of the process, so it takes a higher cook temperature to reduce the organisms on that to prevent foodborne illness. And then also in the 165 degree temperature cooking criteria are those meats that are stuffed, and also stuffing that contains meat or fish or something like that. So those things, those are the general cooking requirements. And there are specific tables for cooking roasts, and then there's an exception for cooking whole muscle beef steaks. Another operational requirement that we assess during an inspection is the proper holding temperatures of TCS foods. And TCS foods, so we already established that by being a TCS food, that means it needs time or temperature control. So for temperature control, what we mean is 41 degrees or below, or 135 degrees or above if the food is going to be hot held. And then if you're doing a process such as cooling or reheating, you want to limit the time that food is between 41 and 135. And there are specific criteria that we would want you to adhere to. There are also options for keeping food under a time control. And that may be the best option in some situations, especially for a temporary food establishment that's operating for a specified period of time. But when you keep food under a time control, you either use that food by the end of that time period or you discard it. So you do want to be mindful of that when you're considering using time control versus temperature control. So some of the equipment you might use for maintaining these holding temperatures, well, we would love to see a little mechanical refrigerator like the one over here on the left. Probably not going to happen in a lot of facilities. You can use drained ice pretty efficiently. Cambros are great at holding food temperatures of hot food. So there are many different ways to accomplish this. And then finally, we would want to assure that the equipment and wares that you are using in your facility have been cleaned and sanitized, using an approved sanitizer that's used according to the labels on the EPA registered label would be important. Just be aware that, I mean, typically what we see are chlorine and quaternary ammonium compounds used, and they have specific ranges that they should be used in. We do test for the concentration of the chemical that's being used, and all chemicals, including sanitizers, must be used according to their EPA registered label directions for use. And I really want to just point out here that there are bleach products so that we see often used that are not labeled for use on food contact surfaces. So read your label and make sure that the product you're using is labeled for that use. So general sanitation requirements are also assessed and addressed when they present a food safety hazard. So water used at a temporary food establishment must be obtained from an approved source. So this would be typically we'll see a hose used to convey this water from the source to the container that's used, and the hose would need to be a food grade hose, so it's designed for that purpose. So water tanks have to be constructed so that they're easily cleanable. And as I stated earlier, those would need to be sanitized between uses as well. So your water has to also be protected. The hoses used to fill water tanks must be sized differently than the hoses used on the waste tanks. So we will be looking for 2 different types of hoses if you're using a hose system to offload wastewater as well. So wastewater disposal then. So the methods used to dispose of your wastewater could include using a catch container that could be disposed of in a sanitary sewer on at the vendor website or at the vendor site. So I don't know if maybe some farmers markets have wastewater disposal on site, but most of the time this ends up being carried back and disposed of at the commissary. So wastewater, including ice draining from storage containers such as coolers, may not be disposed of on the ground or in storm drains. So animals at the market. So a VDH permitted facility, in a VDH permitted facility, live animals are not allowed on the premises of that permitted food establishment. There are specific exceptions for patrol dogs accompanying police, a service dog under the control of a disabled employee in areas that are not used for food preparation. And then dogs are allowed in outdoor dining areas. There are some specific requirements that include posting the requirements for allowing dogs in that area, identify the area where dogs are allowed, and then dogs would need to be on a leash or in a carrier and under the control of an adult. And notice that this allowance is specific to dogs. So that is in the food regulations. There are specific requirements that the operator of the food establishment has to follow. So, local health districts would really like to know when and where markets will operate. Some local health districts do have local ordinances with requirements that are more stringent than the state requirements. It's great if you can provide a list of vendors and information on their permit status. Some districts actually use an event coordinator form, and this really helps them get things sorted out before the event occurs with the vendors. And we would just ask that you contact the environmental health office in your locality to find out what information and forms they require. Again, you can find information on our website about how to locate your local health district if you need help with that. So in conclusion, I just would say thank you. I have not seen the chat, so if somebody wants to break in and share any questions, I could try to address questions at this time, or if you want me to hold until after the VDAX presentation, we could answer them in a joint session.
Let's ask a couple right now, and there's a bunch. So I will ask a couple and then we'll tee up VDAX, and you can maybe hop on live and answer some of the questions while VDAX is presenting, or do it as part of their presentation too. But just to clarify, when you talk about an event, a farmer's market is considered an event. When you're talking about on VDH's side, it's considered a special event.
Yes, a farmer's market, they would get the TFE permit for operating at the farmer's market. So and that's specific to the temporary food establishment vendor, yes.
Okay.
And we would do a pre-operational inspection. So that would be the first time they operate. We would do an inspection and issue the permit at that time. And then we would conduct future inspections based on, the information we get during that initial visit.
Okay. I'm going to take 5 minutes and ask a couple of questions, if you don't mind, Pam, so we can try and get some of these answered. Regarding VDH regulated samples, farm vendors can offer samples sliced on site without VDH inspection, whether it's cooked or not. Is that correct? And does this apply to meat vendors cooking sausage samples on site as long as it's just a sample?
So the exemption in the Code of Virginia is specific to farmers serving or offering their own farm produced products. So yes, if they are offering products that they produced on their own farm and they're offering it to the end use consumer, they're exempt from our inspection. So we would not regulate them sampling that at the market.
But they have to raise the pigs.
Yes.
And make the sausage
Yes.
themselves.
They
Okay.
are the producer. They grew that,
Okay.
they raised it. And they can't like make a sausage biscuit using a biscuit that they prepare, bought from somebody.
Okay.
It would have to be all their own farm produced products. Yes.
To clarify, are vendors with a VDAX certification covered and do not need to be permitted additionally from VDH?
Yes. So the VDAX, like typically the manufacturer, the person that's producing the product under VDAX inspection is not going to be regulated by VDH at the market, right? There are some limited cases where there is crossover between what they're doing in their VDAX inspected facility and what they want to do at the market, which might mean that they would come under our inspection. But if they're, so like say maybe they're making something in their VDAX inspected facility, but they want to offer it as part of as an ingredient on another food, then we would require them to get a TFE permit, but that would be an approved source because it's VDAX inspected. Yes.
Regarding beverages at a farmer's market, if somebody is making lemonade or limeades or Thai coffees, do they need a temporary food, a TFE?
Yes, if they are making that product at the market, that would be preparation and service, and that would be a temporary food establishment.
Okay. Can a TFE vendor prepare food at home?
No. Nope, the Virginia Department of Health, the food regulations don't allow, we have no authority in a private home. We cannot do anything in a private home. So we don't inspect or investigate anything. So they have to do everything at the site.
Does VDH have any type of a summary sheet regarding, and this may be something we can work on with Lester, if not, but does VDH have any type of a summary sheet of what a vendor needs and what type of permit it is? Specific to how do they know if food trucks in their area also need local permits?
We do have that information on our website, which jurisdictions have local requirements. So that is generally available. I can provide that in the list of resources that you share if you would like. I'll just copy a bunch of this stuff from our website and send
That
it
would
to you.
be awesome. That would be great.
Yeah.
If food is prepared off-site, permits have been granted, but reheated on-site, aka soup, does the VDH permit need to be visible to the public?
Yes.
Okay. I like these yes, no answers. Let's see.
Peri, you're doing great.
I know. We love
Really?
let me see.
Definitely threw me for a loop not to get my presentation up the way I wanted it.
No,
no, that's okay. It
this
was
is like
great.
a very fun test.
There's a lot of questions about sampling and hand washing stations. Is that you, Peri, or is that Pam?
I think it's both of us, but
Okay.
let me just.
You want to just run through the chat and look at some of them and see if you can answer some of them?
Yeah, but I would just like for everybody that's got, like an interest in operating in a farmer's market to really see the value of protecting your food and your market and, your name, everything else that comes from, like making sure you're not contaminating the food that you're serving. So, wash your hands before you offer these foods.
Okay. We've got, can vendors cooking on site prep foods at home?
Like not under a VDH permit, no. The home ops are, if they are under permit by VDAX, then that's the way they would do something at home. And VDAX has, specific things that they allow people to prepare at home. And there's things that aren't allowed to be prepared in a private home.
Okay. If you're brewing coffee and giving coffee out as a sample, do you have to have a TFE? Yeah.
Yes.
And from Wayne Brady, I love that. We have Wayne Brady here, who is, I don't know why, it's the silly things that amuse me. Can a vendor purchase commercially prepared products, let's say meatballs from Sam's Club, reheat on site, and then sprinkle with his seasoning blend? If he does that require a TFE permit?
Yes, that would require a permit.
Okay. And then the last question that I'll ask, and then I'll turn it over to, meat samples must be USDA inspected unless exempt. Is that correct?
I think OMPS, the VDAC's Office of Meat and Poultry Inspections will address this in much more detail later on today. But if
Okay.
it is a product that's offered through a VDH inspected vendor, so if it's a TFE permit, we would look for USDA or VDAC's inspection mark, the mark of inspection or the certification through their office.
Okay.
There are some exemptions, and that's going to be addressed in the presentation later.
Okay. And I had said no question, so obviously that was incorrect. I do have a follow-up to which, color me surprised. I have a follow-up to the no live animals at a comment that you made. So
Okay.
it sounds like no live animals would mean no dogs at any markets that sell food prepared in the market. Is that correct?
No, I thought about trying to untangle that while I was
And
presenting
I know
it,
it's going to be addressed elsewhere too, but
yeah, no, that is specific to the premises of the permitted entity. So if you have a TFE that is set up, we would expect the dog to not be in the TFE where they are doing the food preparation. That does not address customers walking by, on the outside of the vendor's table or tent or whatever setup they are. But we wouldn't allow, like, the mobile unit operators should not have animals inside their mobile unit. Similarly, the TFE would not have an animal inside their premises, that
Right.
tent or whatever setup where they're doing their preparation. Yes, but we are not addressing the customers and all of that stuff.
Okay, I know that'll be addressed in a moment. And then the last regarding a mobile food vendor permitted by VDH, can they offer a sample of the food prepared while on site?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Can a mobile vendor offer a sample of food? If they have a TFE permit, can they offer samples of food while on site?
Yeah, a permitted facility, whether they're mobile or TFE, any of those, they can offer a sample or they can offer a meal. I mean, yeah, they can serve food.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
And then this really is the last question. If you, as a follow-up to the meatball question, if they have celery sticks to use to sample their seasoning, would it be permitted? Would a permit be required then?
Yes. There might be some exceptions to that where they would perhaps, so if the seasoning preparation and all of that seasoning mix is under VDAC's inspection, and they also cut up those celery sticks in that VDAC's inspected facility and just take them to the market ready to use, we would not be looking at issuing another permit. But these are the types of things that really need to get sorted out with the health department before the day of the event. So please do, just keep an open mind about, working with our staff. We just want to make sure that everybody is successful in their endeavors. So we don't want to be on site, investigating an illness outbreak. We want to make, and we work with VDACs day in and day out on all of these areas that cross over in other, respects across the Commonwealth. So please just, contact the local health district and we will work out which agency would be best to work with you on this.
Peri, thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind just looking through the chat real quickly as we switch over to VDACs and see if I missed any that are specific to you, I would appreciate it. And I can't thank you enough for coming in and doing this for us today. You're always so gracious and being willing to help us out on the VDH side. It's complicated because you as the producers at farmers market, some need VDACs, some need VDH, some need both. And so we appreciate you coming in and sharing this.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Peri.
I'll be around for a while. If you have questions, I'll try to respond in the chat, and I'll send those resources as well. So,
Okay, and the questions are in the Q&A. Thank you.
great.
I
Okay,
appreciate it. So I would like to say a special thanks to all of our partners. Again, the Virginia Department of Health, Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, Virginia Cooperative Extension, and the Virginia Family Nutrition Program, as well as the USDA, FMPP, Farm Credit, VSU College of Agriculture, Prince Charitable Trust, Virginia Fresh Match, and the Virginia's for Farmers Market Lovers Trail and Virginia's for Farmers Market Lovers. We thank you.